Most people misunderstand what it truly means to detach emotionally. When they hear the phrase feel nothing, they picture someone cold, heartless, or emotionally numb. But that's not what emotional detachment really is. Emotional detachment, in its healthiest form, is not the absence of feelings. It's the mastery of them. It's emotional discipline. It's the ability to be in the heat of the moment and still make a calm, rational decision, instead of being swept away by emotional chaos. It's not about turning off your emotions like a switch. It's about learning when to listen to them and when to lead them. Think about how we typically react in relationships or high-stress situations. When someone pulls away, we panic. When someone criticizes us, we become defensive. When we feel unimportant, we overcompensate, chasing validation or attention. Why? Because we've never trained ourselves to pause and respond instead of reacting. Our emotions become the pilot, and we're just passengers. Emotional discipline flips that dynamic. You acknowledge the emotion. Yes, I feel rejected. Yes, I feel hurt. But you don't act from it. You act from a place of clarity. That's what true strength is. Anyone can react emotionally. That takes no skill, no training. But it takes tremendous inner strength to stay calm when you want to scream, to walk away when your heart wants to chase, to say nothing when everything in you wants to justify, explain, or beg. That's the power of discipline over impulse. The ability to feel nothing in those crucial moments doesn't make you a robot. It makes you emotionally intelligent. It means you no longer allow temporary emotions to make permanent decisions for you. This doesn't just apply in relationships. It's just as vital in friendships, family dynamics, your career, and your day-to-day interactions. People who haven't mastered their emotions tend to live in survival mode. They're always reacting, always interpreting, always stuck in what feels urgent, rather than what is important. Discipline helps you step back. You begin to ask, what's really going on here? What response aligns with my values? What outcome do I want? Not just emotionally, but strategically. When you develop emotional discipline, you become less available to chaos. People can't control you by withholding affection. They can't manipulate you with passive aggression. They can't push your buttons because you've learned how to disable them. You stop being reactive and you become responsive, calm, grounded, focused. The irony is, the more disciplined you are with your emotions, the more freely you can feel them. You're not afraid of your emotions anymore because you know they don't own you. You experience them deeply, but you are not ruled by them. That's the beauty of this kind of self-mastery. Emotional discipline doesn't harden you. It softens the noise, so your true self, your wise, clear, centered self, can finally lead. Detachment is often misunderstood as indifference. People assume that if you're emotionally detached, you don't care, that you're distant, avoidant, or cold. But that's not the truth. True detachment isn't about being emotionally unavailable. It's about being emotionally self-sufficient. It's about being able to stand strong in your own sense of worth and clarity, regardless of what someone else does. Detachment allows you to care deeply, love fully, and give generously, without losing yourself in the process. Think about how often people tie their emotional state to someone else's behavior. When someone responds to a message, they feel validated. When that person pulls away, they spiral. Their happiness, their self-esteem, their peace of mind, it's all resting in someone else's hands. That's not love. That's emotional dependence. Not because you played a game, but because you didn't play at all. When you feel less, you stop over-investing in people who haven't earned that level of access to you. You stop reading between the lines of their every move. You stop creating stories around what it means when they take hours to reply or don't show up in the way you hoped. You realize that peace is more valuable than connection that keeps you anxious. You realize that you don't need emotional drama to feel alive. You can find stability in yourself. And let's be clear, this isn't about winning some emotional battle. This isn't about proving you care less just to hold leverage over someone. It's about protecting your peace. It's about no longer making yourself sick, trying to fix or chase or analyze things that aren't meant to be yours. When you feel less, what you're really doing is anchoring yourself in the truth that your value doesn't come from how someone treats you, but from how you choose to treat yourself. And the moment you start to live from that truth, you stop chasing. You start choosing. You choose who gets access, who gets energy, who gets your heart, not out of fear or scarcity, but out of clarity. And that's the moment you stop being controlled and start taking control. Your real power doesn't show up when you speak louder, react faster, or try harder to prove a point. It shows up in the quiet moments, the pause before the response, the breath before the decision, the silence you hold when you're tempted to defend yourself. That pause is everything. It's where maturity lives. It's where self-respect is protected. And it's where you separate yourself from people who still operate from impulse and emotional chaos. Most people think power is in the explosion, but true power is in the restraint. When you react without thinking, you give your control away. Someone pushes your buttons and you explode. They ghost you and you panic. They criticize you and you lash back or break down. But the moment you start to pause, just for a second, you begin to reclaim that control. That one pause between stimulus and response is where you choose who you're going to be. And that's what makes all the difference. Because now, you're no longer acting out of habit, fear, or desperation. You're acting from intention. This pause doesn't mean you're weak or disconnected. It means you've trained yourself not to be a slave to your immediate emotions. You've learned that not every situation deserves your energy. Not every insult needs a comeback. And not every emotionally charged moment deserves a reaction. That's wisdom. That's emotional maturity. And it's rare, especially in a world that rewards speed, reaction, and instant gratification. When you hold the pause, you create space. Space to think, to assess, to ask yourself, is this worth it? Is this true? Is this how I want to show up? That space becomes your armor. It keeps you from being pulled into toxic dynamics. It keeps you grounded when someone tries to shake your confidence. It gives you a sense of emotional authority, because you're no longer being led by feelings that pass. You're being led by your values. The person who pauses before reacting becomes a mirror for everyone around them. They reflect maturity, boundaries, and calm power, and that energy shifts rooms. People notice when you're not triggered easily. They notice when you're composed. They may not say it, but they feel it. And it commands more respect than any loud reaction ever could. But more importantly, that pause protects you. It keeps your nervous system safe. It keeps your self-worth intact. It allows you to walk away from situations without regret, knowing you responded in a way that honored who you are. Not who someone tried to make you become in a moment of weakness or anger. And over time, that habit of pausing builds a life that's rooted in strength, not survival. You're no longer reacting to life, you're shaping it. You're no longer at the mercy of other people's behavior. You're grounded in your own emotional leadership. That's where real power lives, not in the noise. In the pause, you don't win by reacting. You win by choosing how to act. In relationships, arguments, breakups, career pressure, or emotional conflict, your first impulse is rarely your best one. That initial surge of emotion, anger, fear, jealousy, sadness, is natural. But it's also where most people lose their composure. They lash out, send that impulsive text, say something they regret, or make a decision they later wish they could undo. Reacting is easy, it's automatic. But power doesn't live in what's easy, it lives in what's intentional. When you react, you give the other person control. You allow them to dictate your mood, your decisions, and even your sense of worth. If they pull back and you chase, you're not acting, you're reacting. If they insult you and you fire back, you've let them pull you into their energy. Every time you react without thinking, you are matching someone else's energy instead of protecting your own. You're letting your emotions run the show instead of your wisdom. And that never ends well. Choosing how to act, on the other hand, means creating space between what you feel and what you do. It's the practice of self-command. You say to yourself, yes, I'm upset. Yes, this hurts. But what would the strongest version of me do next? That shift, choosing your next move instead of defaulting to emotional impulse, is how you start to win. Not by overpowering others, but by staying in control of yourself. Because when you're in control of yourself, no one else can manipulate you. They can try, but they'll hit a wall. Your calmness becomes your shield. When you stop reacting and start responding with intention, everything changes. People begin to respect you more. Even if they don't always understand you, you feel stronger inside because you're no longer getting swept up in drama or games. And most importantly, you're no longer handing over your peace to people who haven't earned it. This kind of control doesn't come overnight. It takes practice. It takes catching yourself in those emotionally heated moments and choosing stillness over chaos. Sometimes the most powerful move is no move at all. Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's walking away. Sometimes it's saying, "I'll respond when I'm ready." That's not weakness. That's wisdom in action. The world will keep giving you moments that try to pull you out of character, that try to provoke you, test your patience, or trigger old wounds. But your job is to remember, the win is not in the last word or the loudest voice. The win is in remaining centered when everything around you is trying to make you lose your balance. So next time you're hurt, offended, or angry, don't just react. Take a breath, remember your values, and choose your response like someone who knows exactly what they're worth. Because that is how you win, not just in the moment, but in the long run. Most people don't realize how much power they give away simply by showing they're too easily impressed. When you show up to someone's life acting like their attention is the prize, you instantly shift the dynamic. You place them on a pedestal and put yourself in the position of earning, proving, or chasing. And the truth is, when someone feels like they already have your validation without effort, they stop valuing it. Human nature doesn't appreciate what is handed over freely without any sense of self-respect or standards attached. Being hard to impress isn't about arrogance. It's not about playing games or acting like you're better than anyone else. It's about knowing your worth so deeply that you're not moved by surface-level charm, empty words, or inconsistent effort. You're not seduced by potential. You're grounded in standards. That's what makes someone magnetic. That's what commands respect. Because when you are not easily impressed, people instinctively realize they have to bring more than the bare minimum to the table. If they want to keep your attention, think about it. When someone compliments you or flirts with you, and you immediately melt, chase, or shift your behavior to please them, it signals that your self-esteem hinges on their approval. But when you receive attention with calm confidence, when you say thank you and move on, or when you don't flinch at a compliment because you already know your value, that energy speaks volumes. It says, "I'm not surprised you see my worth. I see it too, but I'm not giving access to it just because you noticed it." That level of self-assurance creates gravity. People lean in when they feel like your attention has to be earned. And it should be. Your time, energy, affection. These are not cheap commodities. They are the most valuable things you have to offer. Being hard to impress protects those resources. It filters out people who are only here for the thrill of the chase or the ego boost of your interest. It ensures that only those who are serious, consistent, and aligned with your values get close. You become a different kind of presence when you move this way. You stop being the person who clings to crumbs and start becoming the person others try to rise up to meet. Not because you're cold, but because you're clear. Not because you think you're better, but because you've raised your internal standards. You're not interested in shallow games, breadcrumb attention, or hot and cold behavior. You've outgrown it. And people can feel that energy the moment they interact with you. So don't be afraid to be unimpressed. It doesn't make you closed. It makes you conscious. It tells the world you know who you are, what you deserve, and that you won't trade self-respect for momentary validation. And that's the kind of energy that doesn't just attract attention. It demands it from the right people. Your emotions are real, but they are not always right. That's one of the most powerful truths you can learn if you want to grow emotionally and mentally. Just because you feel something doesn't mean it reflects reality. Emotions are like weather. They change, they come and go, and sometimes they cloud your ability to see things clearly. If you make every decision based on how you feel in the moment, you're handing over the steering wheel of your life to something that is constantly shifting. Let's say you feel rejected. You might feel like you're not good enough. You might feel abandoned or unlovable. But that doesn't mean you are. That's the emotion talking, not the truth. Emotions are not facts, they are data. They're signals pointing to something happening inside you, but they aren't always telling you the full story. Your job is to interpret that data wisely, not blindly obey it. If your emotion is saying, "I feel worthless because they left," that's not a message to accept. It's a message to question. Most people fall into emotional traps because they believe that what they feel must be true. If they feel anxious, they assume danger is near. If they feel lonely, they assume no one cares. If they feel angry, they assume someone else is wrong. But feelings are not reality, they are reactions. And reactions are often shaped by wounds, fears, past experiences, and unresolved insecurities. That's why it's so important to pause and ask, what is this feeling trying to tell me? Is it telling me the truth or just repeating an old pattern? When you stop blindly trusting every emotion and start examining them, you gain control. You no longer spiral every time something triggers you. You learn how to sit with uncomfortable emotions without letting them dictate your actions. You learn how to feel sad without assuming your life is falling apart. You learn how to feel angry without exploding or saying something you regret. You become someone who feels deeply but lives wisely, and that's rare. This doesn't mean suppressing how you feel. It means observing it with clarity. You say to yourself, I feel this, but I'm not going to become this. That space between feeling and identity, that's where emotional strength is born. You realize that you can validate your feelings without letting them lead your decisions. You can say, I feel hurt, without reacting out of hurt. You can say, I feel scared, and still choose courage. That's real power. Once you understand that your emotions are messages, not commands, you stop being a puppet to your emotional state. You start thinking clearly, responding intentionally, and living with integrity. You don't let a bad moment ruin your whole day. You don't let rejection redefine your worth. You don't let fear make your choices for you. Instead, you step into a mindset where you honor how you feel, but you trust your wisdom more. And when you start doing that consistently, you stop reacting like everyone else and start leading like someone who knows who they are. Silence is one of the most underrated forms of power you will ever possess. In a world where people constantly feel the need to explain themselves, prove their worth, defend their choices, or respond to every criticism, silence becomes a weapon of strength, not weakness. It says, I'm not here to perform for your approval. It communicates confidence without needing validation. And most importantly, it gives you space to rise above noise, drama, and emotional chaos that others try to pull you into. When you are silent, you're not avoiding the issue. You're controlling the narrative. You're choosing peace over performance. You're deciding not to waste energy on people who thrive on conflict, who want a reaction, or who expect you to justify yourself just to keep them comfortable. Silence puts the spotlight back on them. It forces people to sit with their own behavior, their own words, and their own discomfort. That alone often speaks louder than any argument ever could. People are trained to believe that they must speak to hold power. That if they stay quiet, they'll be misunderstood, disrespected, or dismissed. But the opposite is true when your silence comes from strength. When someone knows you're capable of speaking, but you choose not to, your silence becomes a boundary. It becomes a form of self-protection. It says, I'm not here to argue my value. I've already decided who I am. Silence also gives you time. Time to think clearly. Time to decide what response, if any, is truly worth your energy. Most of the mistakes people make happen in moments of emotional reaction, when they say something out of anger, fear, or insecurity. But silence helps you hold space between what you feel and how you act. It allows you to respond from wisdom instead of wounding. You might still say something later, but it will come from clarity, not chaos. In silence, you also reclaim your mystery. You stop being predictable. You stop giving people a roadmap on how to affect you. They don't know if you're hurt, angry, unfazed, or unbothered. And that uncertainty makes them reflect. It creates a shift in power. They start to realize they don't get to control the conversation just because they expected a reaction. But perhaps most importantly, silence protects your energy. Not every situation deserves your voice. Not every person has earned your vulnerability. And not every fight is worth engaging in just to be heard. Sometimes silence is your statement. It's your way of saying this doesn't deserve a response. And in those moments, you aren't avoiding confrontation, you're rising above it. So use silence wisely. Let it be your armor when words would only drain you. Let it be your strength when people try to pull you down into emotional games. Let it be the space where your power breathes. Because silence isn't weakness. It's the quiet confidence of someone who knows they no longer owe explanations for their work. To master the art of feeling nothing but controlling everything is not about shutting down your emotions or becoming cold. It's about rising above impulsive reactions and choosing your responses with intention and wisdom. It's about creating space between what you feel and what you do, knowing your worth deeply enough to protect your energy and peace. When you pause instead of react, when you hold your silence instead of rushing to explain, and when you refuse to be easily impressed or manipulated by fleeting emotions, you reclaim your power. This kind of control transforms your life. It frees you from emotional chaos, commands respect without words, and guides you to act from strength rather than vulnerability. Ultimately, feeling less in the heat of the moment means feeling more in control of your destiny. It means becoming the calm, composed leader of your own story. No matter what storms arise around